Let's look at our first experiment, which is looking to see if caffeine affects your pulse rate. So the initial plan as listed for the experiment is to measure somebody's initial pulse rate. I'm guessing subjects of humans. Give each student some caffeine. So it's something we're supposed to do in a classroom. We'll wait for a specified time, and then measure the final pulse rate. Compare final and initial rates. Okay, so if the pulse rate is higher than it was, then we need to we can make the conclusion that yes, it did affect pulse rate. So you want to be really specific and think about what the problems could be with a plan like this. Also, really think about what are some of the other things that could be affecting the variability in people's pulse rates if they do even change. The biggest problem with this plan is we have no way of knowing if it's actually the caffeine that changes people's pulses or if it's something else. So there's certain things I would want to know. I know some of you are wondering, hey, was this like a sugar, a soda with sugar in it? That's not really what we're looking for. We're going to assume that the caffeine that was delivered was like black coffee or maybe a pill or something that just gave caffeine and nothing else. One explanation or confounding variable could just be the excitement of getting to do an experiment. I have the students sitting, they take their pulse, boring stuff. They've done that before. Then you go, oh, now I'm going to let you drink this or take this. And, oh, okay, so now it's exciting. And I take your pulse rate and it's gone up. So just doing something out of the ordinary could raise pulse rates. So there's a few things that we can do to kind of help determine whether it was actually the caffeine or something else. And the first thing is to include a control group that doesn't get any caffeine at all. So we have something to compare it to. Then here's the thing is you start with a baseline pulse rate, and let's say it is the excitement of the experiment. Well, the excitement of the experiment should increase for both groups because they go, oh, this is an experiment. And you might give your control group something that's caffeine free, that doesn't have anything, but they think they're getting an actual treatment. And so the excitement level should go up the same for both groups. But if it goes up more for those who receive the caffeine, then even then we can show that, oh, okay, the caffeine is increasing pulse rate. The next thing we want to do is we want to try to get our two groups, the control group and the group receiving the treatment, as similar as possible at the beginning of the experiment. So to do that, we randomly assign the subjects to the different treatments, to the control group and the not, to create roughly equivalent groups. Now, this one doesn't always make sense to students, but if we can do random assignment, it should balance the effects of any other variables. For example, some people react to caffeine differently than others. Some people don't have caffeine ever and some do. So those who have caffeine a lot would be less likely to show as much of an increase because they're used to caffeine, things like that. But hopefully, due to randomization, we should end up with fairly balanced groups where we would end up with about the same number of caffeine drinkers and non-caffeine drinkers in both groups due to randomization. It should happen. Does it always? No. But we must always randomize since there will always be other variables we can't control or that we don't even consider. So we need to guard against that. And it doesn't really make sense, but it does work. It works all the time. So replication, it's not what you think it means. It just means that there's enough experimental units in each treatment group so that any difference in the effects of treatments can be distinguished from chance differences between the groups. If we just made a control group of one and a treatment group of one person, it would be really hard to tell effects, if the increased or lack of increase in heart rate was due to caffeine or the placebo, that I'm going to get to in a moment. I haven't said that word placebo yet, but I think some of you know what it means. So it means we want to be able to have our different groups replicated. We want enough representation that we will get that good representation of each group being very similar. If we have very small groups of experimental units, then it's really hard to assure that those groups are similar to one another. And replication can also refer to repeating the same experiment with different subjects, thereby assuring that we are getting that variation, enough variation that would kind of eliminate any other kind of explanation for the results we're getting. This can help us feel more confident applying the results of our experiment to a population. I definitely, before I take a new drug, I would want to know that it was tested a lot before I took it. The third and final step is to make sure that the groups are treated in the exact same manner. So it often helps to kind of do a blind study, and we'll talk about what the word blind means in just a moment, but where you've got both groups in the same room and they don't even know that they're getting two different treatments. So that way you are controlling other variables. In other words, we're trying to make sure those variables are the same for all groups. And that's a very common thing to do in an experiment is you just bring both groups together. They don't even know they're two separate groups, and you impose two different treatments to them. I'm going to let you read through the prevents confounding and reduces variability. And let me know if you have any questions about those two or if you pretty much understand. We'll review it again in class, of course.